Feel okay to you all? Yeah, okay. All righty. So I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us for the School of Education Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action Programming and Recognition of Year in Purpose. This is an important program for us, an important set of programming for us for the School of Education here at Mills as we really connect with and value the work happening across the nation relative to Black Lives Matter in schools, and making sure that we sort of hold these values very prescient and clear within our work with our youth and in our community. To open our program, we will engage in a virtual acknowledgement of the lands and labor on which our work is made possible. If you are not already familiar, please take the time now to look up the first peoples who inhabited the land on which you currently reside and where you go to school or do your work. The lives and living practices of Indigenous peoples were sacrificed to advance settler colonial capitalism. It required both land and labor to manifest wealth for propertied white men and, by proximity, their families. Access to the land required the erasure of Indigenous peoples through traumatic violence. It was their removal and continued containment in this country that makes access to our homes and our workplaces possible. We are complicit, and we do need to be responsible for paying back. Once I finish these comments, I'll leave in the chat a link to a land trust held by the Seguriate group, which is a group of urban Indigenous women that facilitates the return of Indigenous lands back to Indigenous people, or what we call rematriation of the lands back to the original inhabitants. I speak to you today from Ohlone land, otherwise known as the Bay Area in Northern California. The Ohlone people did not cede this land. Their sovereignty was not recognized. In the chat, I ask that each of you write the names of the people that were first on the land that you currently live and work and or go to school on, as a place of paying homage and respect. The settler colonial capitalist project would not have been complete without access to stolen labor. Violently trafficked and engaged in backbreaking and soul murdering work, African descent people, of whom I'm a descendant, built the infrastructure of this country, and their exploited labor and abuse is intricately tied to notions of wealth building some of our families continue to live on. Their lives did not matter. And it's one of the reasons why we continue to push forth this notion that Black Lives Matter, and to really think critically about what it would look like for Black lives to matter in school. Today, we have invited a phenomenal panel of young people who are the experts on their own schooling experiences, how those experiences have felt to them, and how we might engage their experience in school to support, engage, and facilitate, not school them, as co-creators in their learning. This morning during the African American Regional Educational Alliance Professional Development Summit, Nancy Johnson-Jones and Constance Moore, authors of this really phenomenal children's book, Brown, The Many Shades of Love, talked about racial literacy and children's literature. And they raised up the importance of our young people to have the role of author, to have authorship as they engage with literature, to develop what they called and articulate through the lens of critical literacy, to find the love for themselves in the books that they are reading. I thought to myself during that time, we also want to expand that vision for our youth to cultivate and articulate a critical literacy to read the world in which they are living for themselves. I'm delighted to have my dear colleague, Briana Clarke, to facilitate this conversation with the young people who we've invited to work with us today. And so I'd like to introduce Briana quickly so we can move into the panel. Briana Clarke is a fifth year teacher at a Title I school in the Bay Area, where she first started teaching with no supplies and a $100 school budget. Needless to say, quality labs were impossible to run. Therefore, like many teachers across the country, she turned to PhET for help. Using PhET simulations throughout the year, she decided to invest time and resources into creating a bound set of labs that teachers on a budget could use. Her desire to make STEM accessible to all is made real in that promise and that work she's done. Briana has had a long-standing goal of making the STEM community more accessible. When she first studied engineering at Seattle Pacific University, she saw how steep the learning curve was for students and having never been introduced to high school engineering. She completed her studies in physics and then continued to Stanford to attain her master's in science education so that she'd be equipped to teach physics in a modern way. She integrates engineering in her own class and also gives students and teachers workshops to be better prepared for today's job and workforce. I also want to say that Briana is a published author, an educator of curriculum, and I hope that she shares a little bit about her book and its purpose, and the motivations for creating that text and creating more science-minded young people and opportunities for educators who want to work with them. Briana, over to you.
Thank you for that, Wendy. Always appreciative of community that highlights and affirms your work. So yes, I'll put my information to my website so you can see the work that we're doing to keep science and engineering, especially in the Bay Area, relevant in keeping our students of color and other underrepresented students competitive as they are in this new generation. So thank you for that. Welcome again. Thank you guys for coming, spending your weekend, your out of work time to both refine your practice and to affirm and celebrate Black excellence through these students. I'm going to ask that each of the panelists just welcome, or we're going to welcome each of them, ask them to come off of the mic and share their name, school, and grade level. And in order to just make this run smoother, if we can start with those who are seniors and then work our way to younger grade levels, I'd appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Camilla, and I'm a senior at Culver City High School, and my pronouns are she, her, and her.
Hi, my name is Roger, and I go to San Lorenzo High School, and I'm an 11th grader, and my pronouns is he and him.
Hi, my name is Anaya. I'm an 8th grader at Patton Academy, and my pronouns are her and hers.
Gianardo.
Hi, my name is Leonardo Fierro. I go to Jefferson Elementary in San Leandro, grade 5, and my pronouns are he and him.
Thank you so much. And just in case, making sure, did I miss anyone? All right, well, let's get into these questions. So again, to my panelists, these questions are going to sound familiar. Um, we're still going to give about 20 seconds of think time and then share your responses. So, thinking back, when was a time that you felt particularly celebrated in school? Thinking back, when was a time you felt particularly celebrated in school?
Time that I felt celebrated at my school is pretty big, so every once a year we'll have this leadership conference, and they choose a couple of students to be in it and just be in conferences all day and just learn about leadership skills, and so that was really cool to be included.
A time when I felt celebrated at school was when my school has these things called community awards, and so it's like very few from like each class receives them, and I felt celebrated when I received the award.
Felt celebrated was when I was at my school, Richmond College Prep. Uh, out of people in my class, there were 3 students, and I was one of them that got a good grade and got a gingerbread like a kid to make a gingerbread house.
Unsolicited. I appreciate that, Clea. And then I want to go back really quickly because Justice did not get a chance to introduce himself. Justice, can you just introduce yourself to us one more time?
Who, me?
Yes.
My name is Justice Johnson. Uh, my pronouns are he, his. I'm in 7th grade, and I go to Hercules Middle School.
Thank you, Justice. All right. Moving on to the second portion of this question. So, again, we asked you to think of a time that you felt celebrated or part of your community. Do you feel that your experience differs from other Black students? If so, why? So, do you feel that your experience in school feels different than other Black students? If so, why? You can go ahead.
Miss Clark,
Go ahead.
can I just answer the first question before the second question?
Yes.
Well, first, I just want to thank Miss Robin Fisher for inviting me for this opportunity. And I'm happy to be with you, Miss Clark, and the rest of the panelists. And a few times I felt celebrated at my school was when I get Student of the Month and Student of the Year, because that means I got selected by a teacher or administrator because of all the effort I've been putting. When I got picked to be a student leader, because I was one of the few African American students to sign up to try to get to become a student leader. And every year I perform at the talent show. So it was really funny because I got everyone clapped after I finished my kung fu performance. And those
Thank
are three
you.
times I felt celebrated at my school.
Thank you. And to my panelists, please look in the chat as your audience is just celebrating you and the excellence that you guys both have had and do have currently in your school. We appreciate you. Going back again, moving into the second portion of the question, I'll just place it on the screen again. So, do you feel your experience differs from other Black students? If so, why? When you're ready, come off the chat.
I also think that my experiences are sometimes different than my fellow Black students. I think mainly at my school, if you're an athlete or if you're someone that's like really like shows out, and that's when you're seen more. But unfortunately, like when you aren't the one that like is like a star athlete or someone who really like or doesn't talk that much in class, like it seems like they don't really have the same experience as others who do those things.
I also agree with Camilla because there's a lot of Black students that are considered, a lot of them are considered different in a way, as in this one might be outgoing, athletic, they do school events, they get all A's on their tests. And then there's also another group of Black students who are not really might not be consistent with grades or playing sports, or they might, a lot of people say ghetto, they might consider them to be ghetto. And a lot of times teachers, when they see somebody that are considered quote unquote ghetto, they try to put them on the back burner, and they take that group of Black people aside, and then they might get the other Black students who are like, okay, they seem to be more focused on school, so they take those group of Black kids and try to focus on them. And I think that's what is a big problem. Like they try to see how two groups of the same race are different from each other, but it's like, for example, I have friends that are more, they're really different from me. Have different they have different, ideas because they were brought up differently than I was. And I think that's also something else too, the way we're brought up. um, a lot of times teachers might think that, okay, this person was brought up like this, I'm gonna treat them like that. And a lot of times teachers try to treat people differently because the ideas or what they learned. So
So, because at my school I play basketball and I also do kung fu, almost a black belt, and my mom's the PTA president, so I feel like I'm treated a little bit different than some of my African American friends, just because I do a little bit more stuff than what my friends do, and but it's a good way, yeah. So
Thank you for that, Gianardo. At a predominantly Asian school, you may have had racist experience or racist interactions. And then Roger also spoke to when students are seen as ghetto, they are responded to differently than someone who might be quiet or complicit. So, thinking presently, what aspects of Blackness do you feel are unwelcomed or welcome in your class? And let me say that again because I can read y'all. What aspects of Blackness do you feel are welcomed or unwelcomed in your class? And this could be any classes you think of. Again, high schoolers, you have 5, 6 classes. And I thank you guys as students to share some of this because these are not always the best memories. So I just want to give us just 30 seconds to just pause and breathe. And again, I want to thank those in our audience who are celebrating our students. We thank you again. I'm going to read out from Makaya. I applaud the bravery and vulnerability of our student panelists. So much is gleaned from your sharing. Thank you for that. All right, if I can have maybe just one or two more, um, just again share, and then we'll go into an ad-libbed Q&A. Someone had a related question. So I'll share on the screen again, just our current question. So thinking presently, what aspects of Blackness do you feel are welcomed or unwelcomed in your classes?
hi. So I have like it's kind of a personal story, but this was in maybe freshman year, and the time where I felt as if I wasn't being welcomed is when it was finals and I missed 2 weeks of school because I was really sick, and the teacher, it seemed as if everybody was getting their finals graded, and the teacher never graded my final. I emailed him the final multiple times, and he never got back with me. And the thing was, he was also moving to Hawaii during the last like week of school, so I never got my work graded, and it felt like I wasn't being, I didn't feel welcomed, or I didn't feel important, because it's as if he was blocking me out, like putting me to the back burner, like, okay, this kid work is less important than this one's, or something like that, because like you're a teacher and you know that your that final is supposed to be graded, but you never graded it. That doesn't make any sense. And so I think he did that intentionally, because it always felt to me as if he never really liked me anyways. So that's how I felt when I felt unwelcome in that specific class.
Thank you, Roger. This brings me into the next question. This comes from Diana in the audience. How do you, how have you or parents addressed admin when teachers are unsupportive? So, for instance, Roger, you just spoke to a teacher being unsupportive, or Kalia, you spoke to getting numerous detentions that you felt were unwarranted. How have you or parents addressed admin when teachers are unsupportive?
So
And
actually,
if you have,
my bad.
no, go ahead.
So actually, we have addressed the issue about the finals. So my mom actually went to the school district and talked about it. And so actually one of like the head people in the district for the special education, because I knew her since I was in middle school, and so I seen her when I went to visit my middle school, and she actually told me, you know, like you should go to the district and show them proof that you did what you were supposed to do, and I showed them. So I think, but my mom talked to them. She gave them an explanation of what happened, and so eventually, honestly, it took them a long time to change my transcript for I don't know what reason, but it took them a long time to change it, and I think it only recently got changed and like towards the end of last year. So I don't know why, but I don't know. It kind of seems like they're like lacking or being slow on it. So I don't know.
Uh, for me, like my parents, like when I do a work, like an assignment, and then a teacher's like hand it back out to me, and then like I tell my parents about, like my mom or dad, about this, and they send an email to my teachers about like how I did it, and why are they sending a response about like how I did not do it. And then my parents ask like a whole bunch of questions, like a lot of questions, and then my mom sets up sets up meetings with my teachers so they can be on the right page, same page.
Thank you, Justice. Shout out to Black parents right now. I really appreciate hearing them in your stories. Anyone else? All right, then let's go to the next piece. Here's the big question for the day. Thinking forward, what would it mean for Black lives to matter at your school? What would you change? I'm going to give 10 seconds of think time since I know you've had this question. All right, when you're ready, and just to bring voices into the room that I haven't heard in a while, if you have not spoken in a while, please feel free to speak now.
If Black Lives Matter from equally by teachers and staff, and we will learn about Black achievements all year long, not just mainly during Black History Month, because all the achievements should be learned all year long. Because it shouldn't just be Black History Month. Okay, that's it. That can't be it. We need more. And but one thing that's I feel like really has mattered at my school is our librarian, and she's advertised books by African American authors that feature Black boys and Black girls throughout the year. So that's something that I feel like does matter at our school.
Thank you, Gianardo. Again,
Um, oh,
go
oh,
ahead.
I agree with Gio. I think that it's really important for it not to just be a month thing, for everyone to always be thinking about Black lives. I think also another thing for me in my school, I think in history, like we'll talk about slavery, but it's like the really, really simplified version of it. Like no one really knows, like, or no one's really talks about like everything about it. And I just feel like that's kind of like wrong to like, and I think sometimes they try and like do like little like things on Black History Month, like, oh, and this happened, like to try and like talk about it a little bit. But I feel like it should be something that's taught all the time and not just for like a little um like a little month or a little like lesson. I think it should always be talked about, as well as just always supporting the students. I feel like there, like a lot of my times, like the schools will try and make it so like Black Lives Matter just for this month and try and like put up a little like show, making it sound like, oh, like we care, but they don't really, or they don't really do anything really to prove that. So yeah, that's what
I agree with Camilla. It's true that a lot of times like you don't see schools promoting Black lives, or you don't hear them talking about it unless something's crucial's happening, or it's Black History Month and they want to say Black Lives Matter, but you don't hear them really talking about it outside from that. And a lot of times, you notice that like the things we learn in class are mainly like the history books is written by white people. We like a lot of the history of our ancestors are taken out of the books, and it's replaced by other stories that honestly aren't really going to get us anywhere. And we don't they don't teach us the actual history. It's like they're teaching us history of people that stole other people's land. Like, I mean, what am I going to get from that? I want to learn about my ancestors, where my people came from. What did they teach us? So I think that's really important. And I think that's what needs to be changed, is a lot of the curriculum we learn in school.
And I'd say at my school, we would just need a bigger, more of a place that we can talk about what we want to talk about instead of just learning what's in the history books. We can learn about our culture and more of our history of our ancestors.
I would change like to have more teachers and counselors to look just like me. And what would Black Lives Matter at my school is like in my mock funicular class, like my teachers uh like show videos of like Black people that did things and how it changed the world, and then we pick up on that and discuss like what poems or words mean, like what does Tupac, like poems that he's written, like mean, um and how people such as Frederick Douglass changed the world, uh Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr., and Rosa Parks as well. Incorporate more Black history. Hmm. And like to like how history started with Black people, not white people. And I agree with all you guys when you said like that's in the history books they should put like African Americans first, because that's where it first started.
Ooh. I hope our audience was taking notes. I feel like I ran through several sticky notes. I should have just taken out a whole journal. I appreciate you all. Whew, let's take in 2 breaths. Thank you. Thank you. Again, I want to acknowledge the chat. Again, panelists, we are celebrating you and we thank you for all the insight. Powerful, powerful. Thank you for your candor was the last piece on the chat. Kalia, you are going to change the world. Amen. Yes, yes. Taking notes. Proud of you all. Panelists, we're taking notes. Yes. And then 2 quick pieces of just logistics. Again, we're about halfway through our time, and we're going to start getting to a couple of Q&As. And then several people have asked about the recording. This is being recorded, and to the best of my knowledge, it will be seen for public use as soon as it's clipped later. And I think first we also want to make sure we get permission from our folks since they are younger than 18. All right. Whew. Okay, I hope you guys all had a chance to breathe through it. Just as a summary, I mean, we heard from everything from in class to district leaders. Goodness, if you thought that students don't know about what's going on in their system, they surely do. Representation, integration of things throughout the year, not just in February, Black History Month. Um, I think one thing that really came to mind, because of course I am partial to science, but Clea's reference to Henrietta Lex in the middle school, um, I heard a lot of students talk about their Black culture and their being seen being limited to one class out of 5, 6 classes that they have all day. And so that kind of breaks my heart. But it leads into the next Q&A question really well. So I'm going to go ahead and place that on the screen. What are any school projects or assignments outside of history class? And I'm sorry, audience member, I put those parentheses in there just so I could hear some differences. But what are any school projects or assignments outside of history class that have allowed you to share your student voice in an authentic way? Because this is a new question, I want to give our panelists some think time. So panelists, take about 60 seconds to think about this before we answer. Fifteen more seconds. All right, go ahead and share with us, please.
I'd say that I'd say that one thing that I've learned outside of school was definitely in STEM steps, because we talk about Black achievement and Black history every month.
Gianardo, if you could just repeat that one more time. I'm afraid you got a little bit cut off there, and I want to make sure that we hear you well.
I'd say that outside of school, I've learned a lot from STEM steps. And yeah, because we talk about Black history and Black achievement every month. So it's really good that I joined the program.
Thank you, Gianardo.
I have to agree with Kalia. I was really trying to think of something, but I really couldn't. I think the closest has been in English class, where sometimes we do read like books that have to do with Black people, I guess, but a lot of times I feel like they're all about like Black pain in a way. Like I kind of feel like it's never like the Black character is the one doing something good. It's always the Black character that's like sold into slavery, or like To Kill a Mockingbird, when they were just like just things like that, where it's not really like it's like anything good, so it's kind of like depressing, and like it doesn't feel like empowering or anything. It just feels like, I don't know, like icky. I don't know, so I couldn't think of anything regarding the question.
No, thank you. And I think that speaks volumes as well, if you feel like you haven't had that chance. So thank you for that. Is there anybody else that feels like they just haven't had that opportunity to feel like they've shared their voice in an authentic way? Two things. Yes, I wanted to repeat what Misha Mosley said in the chat. Shout out to African American Male Achievement Program. If you're not aware, I think they're a Bay Area organization that seeks to grow our young Black men. But I think this also helps us to put in perspective both the need for outside programs that are outside of our school, and also shows us how we are lacking in school, that if our students need these out of school resources just to stay afloat, it means that we must be lacking somewhere. So thank you for that. And I believe Gianardo talked about being in an after school program as well with STEM steps. Thank you. All right, let's move to the next audience Q&A. So again, I'm going to honor process time. So take 60 seconds. How has the pandemic impacted your education, social interaction, and mental wellness? How has the pandemic impacted your education, social interaction, and mental wellness?
Oh, go ahead, Justice.
Go first.
No, go ahead.
Okay. For me, like what Kyla said, like education, grades are good, online, and for social, I mean, I don't get to see family members, like she said, not often or every day, but though I get to be with my family, and like at school, what at my house, like I have resources, like books that can help me with something or notes, like Who's Frederick Douglass, and I have a Who Was book about him, or Maya Angelou, um, and mental wellness. I mean, that's not too terrible. Keeps me straight. Praying, uh, and hopefully this pandemic, we can get through this pandemic.
Um, I think for me, with school and everything, it kind of became a challenge in the beginning when we first started distance learning last year in March. But I guess I got used to it now, so it in a way became easier. And I agree with Kyla too. Teachers are more supportive now than they were. I feel like they're more supportive because we're online than when we were in school physically, and so I think it kind of made it a bit easier um, since it's online right now, and teachers are more likely to help you since they kind of have to. It's online, so it's more stressful to us. Um, Social interaction. I think I'm pretty good social wise. I've been talking to a lot of people that I really don't talk to at school, so I kind of got closer to a lot of other students, and mentally wise, I think I'm doing good.
For me, at the beginning of the year, it was harder for me to do the work. I feel like for me, it's the opposite. I think the teachers weren't really helping as much. Like, I think that they were um, giving a lot more work and then giving us a lot less time to do it. So that was kind of stressing me out because like last year, like, it was new. So there wasn't, um, they didn't really know how to work Zoom and stuff like that. So it became progressively harder for me, and I think now I'm doing a lot better, but before it was really difficult. I feel like teachers weren't really helping. Like sometimes like we'd be doing assignments and then sometimes they would give us like a week to do it and then they would grade it like 4 weeks later. So it was just kind of like, dang, like I could have done this a little bit later or had more time. And mentally, I feel like it's gotten easier. Like I do still talk to my friends like over FaceTime and stuff. So that's been pretty cool. But especially last semester, I feel like it was really hard mentally with like all that was happening with like the protests and things like that. It made it harder for me to pay attention in class sometimes because it feel like major things happening like in the Black community, and then we'd be expected to like still like do our work, and I'd just be like so like heartbroken over some of those things. So it was kind of difficult in that way, but everything's kind of calmed down for me at this point. So it's been a lot better.
Um, at the beginning of the quarantine, when we had to go to school online, I was getting better grades just because the teachers had to help me because I would stay on after class to get extra help. I do talk to my friends all the time, and we've gotten a lot closer because we talk every day. And at the beginning, it was harder for me mentally just because I'm used to talking to everyone every single day. And it was just different because I wasn't able to talk to them as much because we had lots more homework. And mentally now I'm doing a lot better.
Want to again appreciate and celebrate that you students are here on Zoom once again on a Saturday. We know that, like you just said, we could be out on a run on this amazingly beautiful day, by the way. But we thank you for being here with us and helping us learn how to better serve you guys. Anybody else want to go? All right. Once again, I hope we all are taking notes on teacher empathy. I heard, as we're getting better at this, just as you students are learning how to refine that, again, outside school influence, how protests and other things outside of this are impacting classes. We appreciate you lifting that up. And then again, differentiated stories. Again, here our panelists are clearly school leaders and just thinking about these are the ones who have these parents who can advocate and have resources and can be here on a Saturday and have the willingness to be here on a Saturday. What might it look like for those students who don't have those things? So thank you so much. It's 2:05 and we're going to start to slowly wrap it down. I have two more Q&A audience questions for us to answer. And these two should be a little bit easier, a little less heavy. We'll see. So, panelists, how many Black teachers have you had in your K through 12 experience? Go ahead, take 30 seconds to do that math.
So far in school, I've had 2 African American teachers during regular school, and I've also had 2 after-school ACES teachers so far.
Yes, and only in fifth grade, amen. Let's go in order of youngest to oldest. So Anaya.
I'd say from kindergarten to 8th grade where I am now, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's 2. I've only had 2 in 5th grade and in 7th and 6th grade.
Wrote us in the chat and said that he's had 5 Black teachers thus far. Thank you, Justice. All right, my older ones. Let me see, Roger.
So I had one Black teacher in 5th grade, and then, well, that wasn't like a normal class. It was like EOD where we switched classes. So I had one Black teacher in 5th grade. Um, I had another one in 8th grade for English, and then that's the last time I had a Black teacher, 8th grade.
Oh, 2. Wow, I thought 2 was a strong number when Gianardo said it, but that was only in 5th grade, and now I'm hearing only 2 from the majority of folks. Camilla.
I think at this point it's been about 4, I guess, but it's not really, I've never had any core teachers. So I've never had an English teacher or a history teacher or any of that. Like it's mostly been like coaches or sports medicine. I've never really had any core teachers that are Black. Like I guess yeah, like now I think back, like it's only really been coaches and maybe like people of color, but I don't think I've had a teacher that's really a teacher and they've been Black.
Well, I thought it was going to be a little lighter. No, it's just not. Let's continue. CJ. Think about K through 12 if you had one teacher from K through 8th grade and then had 5 teachers in all of your high schools, you should at least have 28. I'm going to say obviously probably a couple more for junior high. So a rough estimate of 30 teachers over your K through 12 experience. If you are on track with just what African American population being 13%, you should have at least 4 Black teachers. So for those of you guys who not have 4 Black teachers, um, we are below the curve and we need to do better at retaining our Black teachers in education. And that's not on you, that is on us. But just to give you guys just some numbers, because of course I'm a math nerd. Thank you guys for that. And we are gonna go into our last question. Give me a second to share this screen. All right. Our last question from our audience is, how can white teachers show up for you in a way that would be healing? How can white teachers show up in a way that would be healing for you? Again, I want to give us 60 seconds, especially for those of us who are oral processors. I know we can speak quickly, but let's take the 60 seconds to think about that first. And then
So how can they?
when my screen is down, when I stop the slide, that's when you can share, okay? All right. And I just had a clarification from one of our panelists. So how can they respect us? So that's great. That's probably just one skill below it. It's probably a lot to ask. Teachers may not be at that space to be able to um, even begin the healing process, but certainly we can think of ways that they can respect us. So if you want to answer either one of those questions, that's good with me. Go ahead, Justice.
Treat us the same way how they would treat any other student, no matter their race, and put gender up there too.
And Justice, can you give me an example of how you feel like what that would look like in your class?
Mm, like in my class, my Fanuka class, my one of my teachers, like not a teacher, like she gives an example about like how a black student would say something, like talk in class, and then the teacher would say like put the student would get in trouble, and then the teacher will call out that person, but somebody else is talking, and the teacher wouldn't call out that other person for talking, and then you would get like maybe upset because they're calling out you for talking, and you knew you were talking, but they didn't call out this other person that you heard them talking, and that wouldn't be fair.
Thank you, Justice.
I think I would want my white teachers. Well, I had this really good English teacher who happened to be white when I was in 11th grade. And she wasn't even a history teacher, but she still, when we would read books about like like how I said earlier, like Black pain or whatever, like she would make sure that she said all the facts. Like if she was going to say something about Black history, she was going to say everything about it. And she treated us all the same, despite like no matter the race, no matter the gender. And it felt like she didn't really like see us in that way. And she always made sure to like even just like small things. Like I know like one time I wore my hair out and like she'd be like, oh, like it looks nice. Like just like things like that just makes you feel like better, because it's like you might think that people don't notice those things. Or I've had teachers be like, oh, like did you not do your hair today? Like, so it just feels like refreshing to like have like teachers who actually treat you the same despite your race, or just make like make sure you're heard. And yeah.
When it comes to the part what I said earlier about the curriculum and stuff, I actually had this one teacher that like even though the she was white and even though like there wasn't much black history in the book, she always did her own research and she always talked about, like things that wasn't in the curriculum, and that's something that I really liked about it. She shared black history even though it wasn't a part of the lesson plan or it wasn't in the curriculum, she still shared out about it. And to the question about respect, I think a lot of white teachers, I think they really have to know where we come from and where how we were brought up, because a lot of times they see you, they might just assume the worst about you. So I think a lot of times they just really have to understand where we come from, because everybody's raised and brought up differently.
Thank you, Roger. Certainly, we will remember this panel for the rest of our lives, hopefully. You guys have impacted us today. Thank you. You were the teachers in the room today. Thank you for planting seeds. And we hope that our audience will hold themselves accountable to turning those seeds into something that blooms later on. So thank you guys. Once again, we want to again honor the fact that this is your weekend and it is 2:25. So I will just leave about 30 seconds and for us all to just read the chat to lift up and affirm you and appreciate you all panelists. So if you guys would just look toward the chat, I'll give about 20 more seconds for appreciation, and then I'll turn over to Dr. Williams to close.
I am just going to start speaking, but y'all keep reading because we do want to be mindful of your space and your time for your weekend. You are young. It's beautiful out. You need to, I hope, go outside and get some of that fresh air today. I just want to thank you each for dropping really important gems. I hope, and I won't underestimate your knowledge and your wisdom. I think you know how important it is, the things that you shared with us today. I know you do. I appreciate the time and the energy that you've given to being with us today and truly sharing from your heart. You spoke about the hard work that teaching is, but it's also hard work to be a student and to also teach back and give back to teachers and educators. There are many of them on our participant list right now. I want to just raise up a few things. One is just the brilliance of well, I don't know if I'm foreshadowing something for you, Briana, but for Briana Clarke, who I'm sorry for doing that. You're a brilliant educator. And watching you today with our young people across age span and really holding space for them, to create space for them to share with us is quite remarkable. I hope you understand and appreciate that. There are a number of comments specific to you in the chat as well throughout the hour and a half that we had. So thank you. One of the pieces that so many of you all pointed to, and so I want to highlight and also ask my colleague Mandala Pham to reshare a link, is about the link between education, teaching and learning, and mental health for everybody in the school building, for everybody in the ecosystem, and that we have to really raise up and think about how everybody's heart is, and that we don't often do that. So Mandala, if you would also just please share again the link. We had a panel conversation with a few colleagues, school leaders, a psychiatrist, a teacher, Miss Rayvon Jones, she's been mentioned today as well. Yes, and teacher educator here at Mills, to really speak to this, what's important about that. So I will share it in the chat here and with an offering for you to watch it, particularly our educators, because it's the complement to this conversation that our young people have taken us through today. We are going to bid our audience adieu. I need our panelists to stay back just for 2 minutes because I want to make sure that you can receive the gift that I want to give you. And so I want to just make sure that we have all the right information to share that with you. We thank our audience for joining. I want our students to know that you had upwards of 50 plus people who tuned in, adults, learners, educators, teachers, leaders, to hear you and to learn what you had to share. It's an important classroom experience that you provided on the internet today. So thank you. And so if y'all will just hold back, we want to say goodbye to our attendees and thank you so much for your presence and for the ways in which you valued and honored the voices of our young people today. And the charge is this: do more than listen. Whether you're a teacher educator, an educational leader, a teacher in the classroom, a parent, whatever, a grandparent, an auntie, an uncle, whatever it is that your role is in a child's life, please take and share what you've learned. Please take heed to what our young people are trying to tell you about what their experience is and do something about it. It is problematic, and I have found it deeply hurtful at points in hearing their truth, to know that this is what we've put them in front of and that it is a type of abuse. And I'm going to name it that because I'm a psychologist and I see what I see. It is a type of abuse for them to have to go through some of these experiences. They are children. So let's think about that as we think about what directs our next steps forward. So with that, have a very lovely and blessed afternoon. And please reflect on what you've heard and what you've learned. All right. Y'all be well. Take care.